So this would be a declaration of war, which again is part of our Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Congress declares the war. And that was the purpose of the president being there. He was addressing Congress, asking for authorization of war. So we would declare war on Japan on, of course, the 8th. And interesting, Germany, as part of their mutual defense pact with Japan, would declare war on the United States. And so ultimately our December 11th declaration was in response. And that's something else historians have a real good time teasing out. Had Germany never done that, that would have put the United States in a very interesting position. And hard to tell, but likely we would have kept our assets only in the Pacific for at least a few months until diplomatically we could go back and give Congress reason for a declaration. But Germany declared war upon us, with them their allies Italy, and as you can see, the rest of the Axis powers we would soon declare war on. So declaration of war is a legal instrument used by Congress. We always look at, do the means justify the ends? Was this the only option? Was war the right decision? And we can ask that about every war, and I think it should be asked about every single war. We certainly have had that question asked many times in the last decade. It's just as appropriate to ask decades past. This seems like the good war, the true war, the honest war. I think when you take this apart, you have as many questions as any war you would have today. We look at our national security. What was involved in our national security? Did Germany and Italy and Japan really endanger our national security? And I don't think that's as easy of a yes as we might want to arrive at. How did the world perceive our empire? Remember, we declared our independence in 1776. We said we absolutely cannot tolerate being a colony. It is absolutely unjust, and we declared our independence. And we went to war for the next 6 years. And we became a new nation in 1787. And then it only took us 111 years to be exactly what we detested, a colonizer. How did the world perceive our empire? Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico. How did they perceive this empire? And when you start assigning devil horns and halos, I just would challenge that the line is a little bit more blurred than we often want to accept. Every decision of this magnitude always has what we call blowback, or unintended consequences. Certainly you try to plan for everything possible and hope that you can predict and or mitigate the consequences, with the assurity that you never can. So what were the unintended consequences? Well, I think there's several. I think when we look at our human rights and how we treated Japanese American citizens, clearly not the proudest moment of our country. Now, admittedly, we're still reeling from this sneak attack. Japan has invaded us. You cannot minimize this. There are 2,400 dead soldiers that sure are acutely aware of that. But as we look at our history with the internment program, 110,000 Japanese Americans, not Japanese, Japanese American citizens were interned or incarcerated. And I would just caution us in 2013. What type of words are we using? Detained? I love that word today. What does that mean? You get picked up and taken to the Holiday Inn? Detained? Internment? They're incarceration. They truly are. And yet the program would be suspended 3.5 years later with a $25 voucher and a train ticket home. Again, do the means justify the ends? That's a question for both past, present, and future to answer, but we have to be aware that there were unintended consequences. Say 59 different internment camps. As well as there were German and Italian camps. Very, very small a number of them comparatively, but certainly there were. This was a time of nationalism. And nationalism is not relegated to the 20th century by any means at all, but nationalism, again, another perhaps word of caution. Because every time you say that you're number one, aren't you saying that somebody else isn't? And is there a cost or a consequence to that? And these are not isolated photos. Indeed, this was pretty much what took place on our West Coast. Hundreds of millions of dollars of assets as well as lives were lost. And in 1994, President Clinton issued a formal apology, which anything coming out of Washington tends to please half the people, and half the people it does not. But I just think it's important to understand we're all very aware of the magnitude of Pearl Harbor, and I'm not trying to minimize it, gloss over it in any way, shape, or form. I would be doing a disservice to every person. Just know that, indeed, there were consequences, and something I'm always pushing students, were there any other options? And maybe there weren't, but were there any other options?